Compounds with Ions worksheet. And in this one, problem 2 has many different parts. I'm just going to do the first two parts, A and B. So in order to make compounds out of ions, first thing you have to note is that the net charge of the compound has to be 0. In other words, there has to be as many positive charges as there are negative total charges. So as many positive total charges as negative total charges. And we want the formula to be the simplest ratio that you can get. All right, so a 2 to 4 ratio reduces to a 1 to 2 ratio. So in this first case, let's look at the iron and the phosphorus. When we put iron and phosphorus together, notice that your iron has a charge of 3 and your phosphorus has a charge of negative 3. If we just put one iron with one phosphorus, notice that we would have a plus 3 and a negative 3. Those would add up to be a 0. So you add together your positive and negative charges. Another way we talked about doing this was the crisscross method, which is where we took the charge and brought it down to the other element, which works very well in binary compounds, which means you have 2. So you would have Fe3, P3 in this case. But notice that the 3's, the subscripts, they're in a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you can divide one into the other one and get a whole number out of it, you have to go ahead and do that for these compounds. So this reduces just to FeP. So this is actually iron 3 phosphide. And that's your answer. Now in the next case, where you have iron and sulfur, you still have the 3 plus on the iron. You have sulfur with a 2 minus. And notice Fe 3 plus and your S 2 minus. We're going to do the crisscross method here in a second. Now these are the only ions you have to work with, but you still need a net charge of 0. Notice if you put one iron with one sulfur, you get a plus 1 charge because you have 3 plus on the iron and 2 minus on the sulfur. So what do you have to do here? Well, let's see what the crisscross method tells us. That means we need 3 sulfurs, and if I have 3 sulfurs, since each one has a negative 2 charge, 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. But I also need to put down the 2 for the iron. And notice positive 3 times 2 gives me a positive 6. So if I take the number of positive ones times the charge, which is a plus 3, plus the number of negative ones times the charge there, notice I should get a 0. So for this one, my compound will be Fe2S3. And this is now a neutral compound.